Hey everyone, welcome to Carysgarage. And on this episode, we're going to get some stuff done to the 1960 International B120 pickup. Because like I've said before, I don't like pushing cars, and if it doesn't run and drive, it's kind of annoying. So we're going to try and make it do something. And it'll be the first time anything's happened to it since probably the early 70s, 74 maybe. So let's get started. And before we get started, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, do that real quick with the bell. And also, don't forget, I have a Patreon for the YouTube channel. Information's down below in the description. If you feel like supporting, it's not much money, and any little bit helps with some of these projects and trying to get them further along so I can make more videos for you. One of the first things we need to do to this truck is rebuild the drive shaft. I never had a drive shaft with this truck. When I got it, it was completely missing. And a good friend of mine ended up parting out a 1960 B110 just like this, same wheelbase. And I was able to get the drive shaft out of it, and it was disgusting and grungy, so I completely cleaned it up, painted it, and installed some new U-joints in it, which is coming up now. So now we have, as best as I can call, a rebuilt drive shaft. This truck isn't going to be really driven very much for quite a while, and eventually I will take this back out and I'll have it like balanced and whatnot. But for now, it's really just going to be driven around the yard and over to the other side, so really not that big of a deal. But it's got new U-joints, painted them up, cleaned them up. Biggest problem I have right now, besides it rolling off the truck, is finding a center support bearing. I bought one, didn't have the right ID of the bearing, so it wouldn't fit. So for now, I'm just going to put this old one back on, so it just kind of holds into place. I'm going to shove a couple of things in there just so it, stays. It'll be a little bit noisy, but like I say, this truck really isn't going to be driven all that much, just to be able to move it around the yard. So let's go ahead and throw this guy up underneath the truck, bolt it down. Got a new strap kit for the rear end. Pretty exciting. I just remember how to phase it. Won't be that big a video. Well, if we look up there, it's bolted into the transmission. It's got the sketchy, completely not great center support bearing, which is completely disconnected, but whatever. And then all the way back to the differential, got brand new straps back there, so it is actually in. I'm gonna pack this center support bearing with some stuff just to kind of keep it centered. It's gonna be noisy, but if we're just moving around the yard, it doesn't really matter. But it has a drive shaft, it's in, first time in a long time. Well, for the first time in probably longer than I've been alive, this truck has a drive shaft. It's got the new U-joints. The center support bearing, like I said, is completely destroyed, but we'll get into that at some point. I was missing the fuel line, and I opened up the driver's door to put it in neutral, and I found this. So we're going to go ahead and take a look under the hood because I'm going to take the carburetor off. We're going to see if this is a fuel line that we've been missing, which I think it might be. If it is, that'd be really cool. And once we get the carburetor off, we can take it apart. We're going to clean it up really thoroughly. I'll see, I guess, if Napa has a rebuilt kit. And then once we get that, I guess we'll see if it actually starts. So let me bring you a little bit closer. Let's take a look and see if this is actually my fuel line. Well, the sun is going down pretty quick, so we don't have a lot of sunlight left. But for now, sorry, my dog keeps barking in the background. Well, it appears this is my missing fuel line. It fits. Excellent. So now let's pop off the carburetor really quick so we can clean it up and see if we can't get this thing to actually start. Easy enough. There's the carburetor. God, this thing's disgusting. Like I said, we are starting to run out of sunlight. We don't got much time left. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull some of the parts out of it and clean out the inside so I can have access to the truck. Put some of the parts in my little storage unit. There are some parts in the back. I'm going to be able to get in here because I need to rewire the ignition switch and do a couple of other little things. But very dead box. And I have a spare steering wheel that I can get restored if I ever want to get to that point. I've got a good pair of sun visors, which the material is actually not bad, so I'm going to keep these out of the weather. I don't know why I let them sit in the truck with the no windows for so long. My extra piece of rear glass. This is going to go live in a car for a little while. I think the ignition switch I'm looking for is in that box. But and then we have a complete another set of door panels. They're not the right color, but they're in good shape. Aha. This is what I was looking for. It's the ignition switch out of a 62 or 3 that works, but probably can't see it on camera. This is an original International Harvester. It's got the IH on it. So I want to put a little bit of WD-40 in it, check to make sure that it works correctly. And then this one is going to go in the dash of this truck because all these doors, one of the sets, I think it's the greenish set, that has door locks that match this key. So another thing we're going to be doing soon, once this fires up and moves under its own power, we're going to take all the doors apart, use, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doors. We're going to take parts out of these doors, completely mix and match, take these doors apart, clean them up, rebuild them, put glass back in the other door, get it to work properly, have windows that actually close, clean up the truck, make it to where it'll close nice and tight, and then move on to the next thing. You know, we could actually move this truck project along pretty far, pretty quickly. So I want to be able to at least drive it around the yard. That's my biggest goal. But the sun's just about over the horizon, so I'm going to call it a day, and we'll catch back up on it tomorrow. Well, it's the next day, and the weather's turned kind of crappy. It's probably going to start raining. And one of these days, I really hope this channel can get decent enough to where we can actually get a shop space. That would be amazing. But for now, I have the drain plug undone on the engine. I figured this engine oil is probably older than most of the people who watch these YouTube videos, so probably a good idea to change it. So I'm just going to let it drain until the very last moment before we decide to do anything. And I let the carburetor sit overnight. It was incredibly clean. I was not able to get a carb kit yet. I had to order one, so a couple of the parts, like the accelerator pump, actually still works. Wow, that blows my mind. This carburetor was so incredibly clean, like it was actually mind-blowing. It was that non-ethanol free gas. It was that ethanol free, you know. Well, back then it was just gas. Didn't have any ethanol in it because this truck's been sitting for so long. So I just cleaned it up really good, cleaned up the main jet. So let's go ahead and throw it back on. We're going to check out the spark plugs, fill it up with some oil. We'll see if it runs. I don't see why it wouldn't. Let me get you a little bit closer. Let's take a look and pull the spark plugs out and just clean those off. Several years ago, I did put a new set of points in it because the points were actually missing. So those are fresh. I actually don't know if I gapped them correctly. Meh, we'll see how it goes. But I know I've never checked these spark plugs, so I figure it's not a bad thing to pull them out, check them. Wow. They're old. Now, at some point, for now, let's just clean them up. And then sometime down the road, we'll go get some brand new spark plugs. Because these things are bloody old. But as long as they give some sort of spark, we should be just fine. Tell you what, there's something you really don't see very often anymore, unless you get something old like this has been sitting, is lead deposits. That's how long this truck has been sitting. It has lead deposits on the spark plugs. That's impressive. These are just old Made in America champions. So depending on if it breathes to life and sounds okay, we'll treat it to some new spark plugs, and then we'll see if we can get the cooling system maybe to do something. It probably leaks, knowing my luck, but we'll give it a try. And this is actually an original International Harvester radiator, which is kind of cool. And that one's an old AC Delco, so it's all mix matched. So as long as it does something. All right. The other thing is, I don't even know if I just should try and attempt to see if the fuel pump works. I doubt it. I'm going to go get some oil, some fuel, a battery, and we'll see if this thing does anything at all. Got the drain plug back in, so let's go ahead and give her some oil. What I'm probably going to do first is just fill the bowl on the carb from the vent. Just to let's see how much of a mess I can make here. Not bad. So I'll fill the bowl on the carburetor through the vent just so it has fuel in it, and then we'll try and start it. And now I'm making a huge mess. That's great. And I also don't know how much oil this thing takes, so we're going to put 4 quarts in, and we'll check. I'm sure it takes quite a bit. It's a pretty big engine. This is the Black Diamond series. I believe it's a 240 cubic inch inline 6. It's a pretty honking good size engine. From what I've heard is they're pretty good torque monsters. They're not fast, but they got some good torque. Which I always love me a good inline 6. Well, 4 quarts won't even show on the dipstick, so let's add a couple more. I go through so much oil on all of my cars that I buy it in bulk. I pretty much use the O'Reilly's 1540 heavy duty diesel oil in pretty much everything minus a couple of vehicles. I've got a couple of diesels. Even in my BMW, I run it, a little higher extra zinc content on the older engine. The air cooleds love it, and yeah, I can get 2.5 gallons of it at a time, and it seems to work pretty good. Haven't had any problems with it. Man, this thing takes a lot of oil. And, especially with anything this old, I have been using Lucas Oil heavy duty stabilizer for a long time, and I've always had really good luck with it. So I put some in this last bit, thicken it up a little bit, and that is going in. I think this thing probably takes about 6-7 quarts ish, maybe. I was not able to get an oil filter, which was a big bummer, so I'm probably going to end up doing another oil change when this gets on the road. You know, just driving it around the yard, not that really big of a deal. But in general, I think this thing is pretty far away from actually being a regularly driven vehicle, because there is a lot of stuff that needs done. Brakes, You know, I don't know how well this engine runs, if it runs fairly decent. Cooling system, I mean, it's been sitting for 50 years, I would guess. So the big goal is to get it to start and move around the property. And if it can do that, I will claim that as a huge success. Because I really don't like pushing dead cars. Cool. That is just around the full line, so I will say that is good. Now, since the drive shaft is connected, first time it's had one in a very long time, let's make sure it's in neutral. Because I never had to worry about that in the past. Okay, it's in neutral. Let's put some fuel in the bowl, and let's see if it does anything. Kind of exciting, honestly. All right, well, I got some gas coming out over here. Let's see if the accelerator pump works. Oh my God, the accelerator pump works. That is crazy. Okay, here's the big moment of truth. Let's hook up battery. It's definitely not the right battery for this truck. It's actually for a Volkswagen, but it'll work, I hope. So now the other thing, the electronics on this are pretty whacked out. So I've got it kind of hot wired. So we take this guy, we hook it up to the positive. My dog will start barking a whole bunch because he does that. Let's see if it does anything. All right. Nothing. We've got 12 volts at the coil. And it appears the battery that I just charged up is dead. So let me grab a different battery so we can get some good cranks on this guy. All right, got the battery out of my Chevy. So this ought to work better, I hope. And I don't know what in the world. It's a fan, the pump up here or something. God, it sounds terrible. All right, see if it does anything. I mean, I guess I didn't really expect it to start up after sitting for so long. Success! It starts, doesn't knock, pretty loud, but hey, it actually started. That's a pretty huge success. Now I just have to figure out some sort of a fuel supply and do some wiring because it's got no voltage regulator, the starter's not wired, the ignition switch is completely missing. I have a replacement for it, but I'm gonna have to spend some time really figuring all that out. But wonder if the fuel pump works. Let me tinker with that for a minute. Well, I tinkered with it just a little bit. I tried to see if I could get the fuel pump going. It's leaking a little bit. I was missing a couple of fittings, so might be pulling a little bit of fuel. I just have it hooked up to an auxiliary gas can. Yeah, let me show you where we're at now, and I'm going to try and maybe do something I never thought I was going to do in this truck anytime in the future. Let's hook this guy up. Got spark. Fires up pretty good now. So one of the big problems I have with if it stalls like that is I have no way to restart it unless I get back under the hood. Really need to mess around with those wires, see if I can't get those sorted out a little bit. Well, I guess like anything that sits for too long, it's being a total pain. Not a surprise. We still have fuel. Well, I guess I did want to get driven. I mean, that's 6 feet, but that's 6 feet more than it's done since 1974-ish, whatever. So, ooh, that's toasty. Looks like I want to do a little bit of messing around with the wiring, see if I mess around with that switch. Fuel supply, I doubt really getting much fuel. That fuel pump's pretty old. I'm going to see if I can just get an electric clicky-clack. You know, fuel tank's definitely going to have to get cleaned out. It does have a little bit of a knock that I can hear in the lower end. Cooling system, you know, all the things of a vehicle that's been sitting for a really long bloody time. But, you know, this is a really big, big improvement. Moved under its own power. It starts, runs-ish. That's a pretty darn good success. Anyways, I think we're going to leave it off on that because this is going to be a little bit till I can get a few other things for this. And anyways, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and catch you on the next one.